8 questions that we got to ask ourselves before we hold space. The first one is to be really honest with yourself. Really honest, and ask, what is your current capacity? What is your current capacity? How much can you hold? How much are you willing to hold? And we can frame this almost as like our energy is a cup, and it's filled with whatever we choose to fill it with. We can ask ourselves, how full is my cup right now? And this is where we can bring this concept of responsibility in. How much can we responsibly hold without becoming burnt out, without becoming depleted, without becoming irritable and empty, right? That emptied cup. We can't pour from an empty cup. So for instance, if you were exhausted from hearing your clients' heartbreaking stories, and it has nothing to do with your work, that might be beyond your capacity to hold, right? Okay. So yeah, the first question to ask, right, is our capacity. Before we enter that space, before we even engage, how can we check in with ourselves? And I invite you to follow along as necessary. If you want to write down your thoughts alongside this, you can. But that's just the first part. What is my current capacity? The second question is, what would improve your ability to be fully present in this shared space? This is where requests and boundaries come in. What would improve your ability to show up fully? And sometimes we think, oh, I can't ask for that because I can't ask for that, right? Like I invite you to think about this with an open mind, assuming the best possible outcome. What kind of requests and boundaries would you make? And while we're considering this, I invite you to also consider your level of rest, your level of hydration or hunger, physical pain, or attention span. What type of requests and boundaries can help you to be kind to yourself? And this is where, for those of us, raising my hand, who have struggled to feel like our needs can be met by others, who have struggled to have trust or faith in others meeting our boundaries. It can be hard. It can be hard to name these, but this is the practice. This is the practice, by reclaiming it for ourselves and just naming, I request X, Y, and Z. I request this for myself. I require X, Y, and Z. What do you require? What is non-negotiable for you to be as fully present as you can? At the top of class, we did a breathing exercise together, right? To ground, to connect to our breath. That is one way that helps me stay fully present in this class. It also helps us become present together, but it also helps me. This is a request that I make of our time together that is supportive of my practice of teaching. And you can do this too. You can do this too. Next. Now this is where we're going to start talking about, see, some people think that having your video off, I see, okay, I'm going to read this comment because it's very insightful. Some people think that having your video off means that somehow you are not fully present. For me, actually, it allowed me to be more fully present and open than if it was on. I'm glad you shared that. I'm really glad you shared that, because that is part of my reality as well, right? I'm neurodivergent. I sometimes have difficulty with ADD. I'm pretty autistic. And it can be very distracting to see a lot of faces. And if I'm in the room, if I'm a participant, sometimes it's distracting for me to be showing my face because I'm emoting so much, or I'm trying to look, perform, being engaged. But as a teacher, in this current moment, I am trusting that whatever you're doing on the other side of your screen, that you are absolutely doing it in service to your best benefit. I am trusting you completely. You could be taking a nap, and I still trust you, because that's what you need, right? If you need a nap, take a nap. I see another comment. I appreciate what you just said. I had never seen my difficulty in setting boundaries as a fear of people not meeting my needs. I always viewed it as a me problem, never as a trauma response. I'm glad you shared that. Yes. For some of us, trauma rewires the way we orient towards relationships with others. Trauma can skew the way that we view the world, including the ways that we're going to be met in our needs and requests. And that's where trauma-sensitive boundaries comes in, right? These are to be sensitive towards us, to be sensitive towards our pain, towards our trauma. As we hold and set these boundaries, what I'm also saying is I'm leaving space for my healing. These boundaries create space for my healing so that I can let in some joy, so that I can build trust with you, so that I can practice boundaries and requests in a way that incrementally brings us closer together, right? So thank you for sharing that comment and tying these things together. So I'm going to move on to question number 3. Question number 3, when we're sharing and holding space, what topics, information, and details would be appropriate for the situation? Now I want to break this one down into the nitty-gritty, because everyone here, all of you, have a different interaction, different situation that you are maybe preparing for, considering, right? I don't have a one-size-fits-all answer. I can't tell you what to do. It would actually be pretty unfair of me to take that away from you, right? This is problem solving that you have the answer to. And when you figure it out, that's what's going to be the key, right? It's not me solving the problem for you. I actually don't know what to do. I don't know how to solve it for you. But here's where we can start. You are invited to consider what your mutual interest is in any given situation. And by mutual interest, I give an example. If you are a hairstylist and your mutual interest with your client is for them to get a great haircut, for them to receive quality care, and for the situation to create a satisfying experience so that they come back. Right? Those are some mutual interests. That is something that both parties want. And it's okay to set boundaries to keep that mutual interest on track. I've heard a lot of stories of oversharing in situations where there is, like the hairstylist, a sense of perhaps I need to hear their oversharing because I don't want to lose this client. I need to put up with this emotional dumping because I don't want to lose out on business. I don't want to lose out on community. I don't want to lose out on whatever that blank might be. But removing ourselves just a little bit, what do we both want here? Where is our overlap of mutual interest? And how do boundaries help keep them in? Right? How do those boundaries help assure a win-win situation as much as possible? Right? So I give a little visual here. There's a Venn diagram. And the overlap of those circles represents the shared space between two people. And notice how each circle is still whole, right? They exist outside of that sliver, but only a sliver is shared. We can consider this as a metaphor for what we choose to share when we're holding space. We don't have to share everything. We don't have to carry everything. And I want to maybe make this explicitly clear within this space as well, right? The overlap where we meet is this topic on how to create trauma-informed or trauma-sensitive boundaries. We are talking about trauma, its responses, the ways that impacts our nervous system. But I want to name a boundary that I have, which is I am not here to carry people's trauma history. I'm not your therapist, and I'm actually not your healer. And I don't mean that to be cold. I mean that to say that this is what I can responsibly carry. So the ways that I set up this space, the questions that I answer, the ways that I, and we'll get to this next, orient our questions towards the present, are to align those interests so that we don't end up spiraling and bringing in the past, where perhaps it doesn't serve our mutual interest of learning this topic. Right? A thought just came up. I'm reading the comments. It can also be that the hairstylist can abuse their position and the nature of the situation to be intrusive into the client's life. Yes, I'm glad that you brought up, so that the oversharing can also perhaps be something that's not, sometimes people mistake learning about someone for intruding, right? Sometimes, and I'm going to call out healers. Sometimes healers, teachers, people who hold things in confidence might feel a little sense of ego, a little inflation that happens when it's like, wow, someone really opened up to me, right? They've really bared their soul. But as we're going to see, let's go into question number 4. What then is appropriate to share and what is not? What is appropriate to share and what is not? Not everything is appropriate to share in that situation. But some things are. So using this class as an example, right? I don't need to know your trauma history. I will share that I assume that in my class, most if not all of my students have some experience with trauma firsthand, most likely complex. That is a baseline assumption. I don't need to know the details of your trauma, but it is appropriate to share how you're feeling in this moment. And you might even name, as it's come up, oh, I didn't even connect that this might be a trauma response, right? We can name that without unpacking unprocessed traumatic history. And that also helps with everyone sharing the space, because everyone's in a different space of healing. We can talk about the trauma without talking about the trauma. And it helps with the boundaries for somebody else who maybe can't hear it today and doesn't want to, is not interested. It is not appropriate to share, right? So let's go into what we can do. What questions, conversations, and discussions, I think this cut off a little bit, would orient your interactions towards the present moment? And when we are talking about orienting towards the present moment, one thing that I like to share is it can be more present, or it can feel more pleasant in the present. It can feel more pleasant in the present. And that's not to bypass anything. That's not to say that negativity has no space. Your pain is welcome here. Your pain is welcome here, right? Your emotion is welcome here. Your anger is welcome here. Your raw rage, your tenderness is welcome here. But your pleasure is also welcomed here. Your joy is also welcomed here. And those are things we find in the present moment. So, how do we steer our questions and conversations into the present? One way is to engage the senses, to engage our senses. And I want to make a little note of being aware of our own ableist tendencies, right? Not everyone's engagement with their senses is the same. So it's good to offer options. How can we connect to the present? Perhaps by things that we see, notice in the environment around us, things that we can taste or touch, hear or feel. And I give a few examples that I like to share, because you can still build meaningful rapport with these types of questions. So if you're somebody who does body work, for example, and you need information about your client's physical sensations, right? You want to know how their body is feeling. Instead of asking, hey, how's it going? How's life? Consider asking, how does your body feel in this moment? And it's that in this moment that's really important. Because there's probably going to be like, oh, I came in here because of this and this and this. But right now, let me check in. Let me notice myself. If you're someone who's trying to build rapport with your client, instead of asking, hey, how have you been? Which can be a big question. It can be a big question. That can be a lot. We might consider, how can I best support you today? That puts the agency in their hands, and they can name their needs as well. And if you can meet those needs, great. And if you can't, great. But it's contextualized in the present. And finally, if you need information on their emotional state, if you want to know what another way to think of this is your internal weather. Instead of asking, how are you? Which can go into a whole tangent of, oh, I'm terrible, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. You might consider asking, how does your energy feel right now? What does your energy feel like right now? Heavy? Can you describe it? Can you place it in your body? If that's information that you are needing for that interaction to be meaningful, right? We're just being intentional with our words. So I wanted to open this up and offer for you to give it a try. And let me, reading comments really quickly. Can you share thoughts on how one with a history of trauma can respond respectfully of their own boundaries when being the receiver of the first column of questioning? I see. So if you are, if somebody says, how's it going? And you're like, I don't want to go there. You can share exactly what you want to share. You can reframe the comment internally. You can say, okay, well, how's it going? I don't want to answer that question because it's going to bring me into a whole other ball of yarn. You can answer, how my body is feeling in this moment. I'm here. My neck hurts a little bit, but I'm here. You get to decide how much you share. You don't have to share everything. You don't have to share everything. This is also where boundary keeping, when you're in shared space, right, also takes intention. If we're just responding and activated by these questions, can we take a moment to pause and say, what do I really want to answer? I hope that answers your question. I don't know if I got to the core of it, but I hope that you can align those questions with the second column internally. Even if they don't ask it any particular way, even if they don't ask it in a particularly trauma-sensitive way, how can you be trauma-sensitive towards yourself in what you decide to share? I hope that makes a little bit of sense. So the invitation is to give this a shot, to try it out. If you want to think on this, you're invited to do so. If you'd like to pop it into the chat, you can. But as you're holding space or sharing space, are there any topics or questions that perhaps lead to oversharing that we can strategize a creative solution in anchoring it to the present? And I'll explain what I use for this class, because I use this strategy as well. And I use it because I talk about trauma a lot. And I made a connection that when I tended to ask people why they're here, what brought them to my work, what brought them to this space, a lot of times when I asked that big question of why this, it tended to lead to a overshare of traumatic history that I actually needed to be more intentional about. I didn't need to know that information in some circumstances. And then I felt burnt out. And then other students heard it, and perhaps they overshared, and then they felt burnt out. And now we're all just sitting here with our unprocessed trauma, wondering why we're all so tired at the end of class, right? We don't have to be exhausted in these interactions. I hope that this gives you energy. I hope that this gives you life. And I hope that by remembering that we're in the present moment together, that's the spark that brings us to those reminders that life is sweet, that people are kind, that things can be funny, that there's joy in community, and it's not so exhausting. So as we're thinking this over, I'm going to move on to the next question, which is, what type of support would help you honor your word? Therapists, counselors, and professional listeners are helpful. And if you want to reach out to a friend or a colleague, I encourage you to ask for their consent before engaging. And if they say no, if they say, you know what, I have no spoons, I'm so burnt out, I don't think I can brainstorm, I don't think I can support you, it's okay to say thank you. Thank you for taking care of your needs. Thank you. And I'm going to keep looking for someone to support me, and that's okay. I also want us to practice asking for help and know that just because one person says no, it's not a forever no. It doesn't mean that no, you can't have this support. It doesn't mean no, you are unworthy of being met in your needs. It just means that in that moment, for that person, for whatever reason it is, it's a no. And if you're able to practice receiving that no, there's a good chance that that's healing as well. There's a good chance that that's healing as well. So taking an opportunity just to name, who are my supports? What supports do I have? This class, for example, is a support, right? This type of intention, this development of practice space is a support for you. This is one way we can also take some of that worry out of our heads by jotting it down and seeing on paper that we're not alone, that we don't have to solve this all by ourselves, that we can leverage community support. And number 6, we want to think ahead. What is your response if your boundaries are not met? As I mentioned before, let me pause really quick. So what if it is also a matter of undersharing, where you ask a question like, why do you like this thing? And it's met with silence or struggle. I don't know if maybe that's a question. I don't know if I can fully answer it, because that also, if somebody's having trouble answering, if you're being met with silence, they might not be ready to answer that question for any number of reasons. But I'm going to move to the next one because I don't think I can answer that without more context. And if it is an issue of undersharing, sometimes people don't want to share, and that's okay. That happens in this class all the time. And it doesn't hurt me any, I trust you. I trust you deeply. And I trust that if you aren't sharing everything, that's fine. That's fine. Can I show number 5 again? Absolutely. Number 5 is right here. What support would help you honor your word? So number 6, what is your response if your boundaries are not met? I shared about this just a moment ago, right? Somebody was trying to come into class. It was for, I think, 11. And I had to hit the not admit button. Some options that I like to share as far as strategy include: what can you change about the situation? What can you improve about the situation? And perhaps, what can you remove in the situation, including yourself? Can you remove yourself from the situation? And for this question, this is just something to spend some time with. To really think about it. What can be influenced? We don't have to think about trying to anticipate every single move the other person might make, because we can't. But just assuming that boundary isn't met, that they already know. What are your intentions? What is your game plan? And having that game plan of what we can do if those boundaries are not met, we can also plan for our own nourishment. What would nourish you before, during, and after this interaction? What's your game plan for self-care? I invite you, especially if you're someone who holds space, especially if you're holding space, what would help you release that interaction so that you're not carrying the memory of it for hours and days after? What would help you release that? What would help you reclaim your energy? This isn't a space to invite ritual, to invite some consistent, ritualized practice that feels good. I think some of you who've been to my classes before know that I usually keep a cup of tea with me. This is how I nourish myself while I'm teaching. After class, I turn off my screens, and I usually wash my feet. It's because feet take up lots of energy. It's a way that I feel like I can just wash away whatever happened. And I can focus on the sensation. I can focus on the sensation of the cool water, that kind of rush of realization of being in this moment. And it's innately pleasurable to me. I don't even have to force myself to do it, because I just enjoy feeling like I can wash whatever happened off of me. so that that energy doesn't stick to me the rest of the day. But this is a time to come up with your game plan. I think for many of us, we're so exhausted, right? We get so exhausted and depleted that we start losing these moments of care for ourselves. So I really do encourage you, especially if you're in this space with me right now, to put your energy into what will nourish you. And be unapologetic. Ask for the moon, because you deserve it. And finally, question number 8. This is an important one. How would you show up if you felt safe? Boundaries and requests help create a sense of safety. When we feel safer, we are more prone, we have more capacity for collaborative and pro-social engagement. Meaning that we are better problem solvers. We have better listening skills. We have more creativity. And we have more joy. So I invite you to describe your ideal outcome. How would you show up if you felt safe? And I will answer this. When I feel safe when I'm teaching you, when I feel safe holding a container that's a little bit porous, right? This is a community class. I don't know who's going to show up. I don't know who's in the room. I have social anxiety, by the way. This can be sometimes a stressful dynamic, right? However, when I have that safety of knowing that, all right, I got my tea, I have boundaries, class is going to start here, no one else is coming into the room after this point, cameras are off, mics are muted, we're using the chat. Even if there's times when things go a little sideways, right? I still feel generally good. I feel safe. I can smile more. I have more fun while I'm teaching when I feel safe. And I'm a better teacher. I say that with no ego. Just objectively. I'm a better teacher because I'm actually more attuned to you. When I'm out of it, when I'm in my head, when I'm worried about who's going to come in, who's this person, did I see them on the list? I don't know. Were they on the Eventbrite? Did they hack it in? Did they use an old link? Am I on the right one? When all those things come up, I am not very focused on you. I am underserving you if I am in my head. So all these trauma-sensitive boundaries are to help me serve you by helping me serve me, by helping me bring in more joy and reduce the distractions. So, when I feel safe, I share laughter. Yes, I'm going to stop the screen share, just letting you know. One moment while I do that. I want to just kind of reflect on how vulnerable it is to share joy and laughter. To share that we're having fun. To not be afraid of looking uncool. That takes safety to leave your cool at the door. But that's why my goal is to create safety, because healing can also be fun. It doesn't have to suck. It can be fun, right? We can share moments of joy and laughter. So, honoring time boundaries, right? We're close to the end of class. I don't have the full capacity to answer many deep questions at this time because we will be closing on time. But I invite you, if it feels good, to share in the chat how you're feeling in this moment, how this practice landed. Was it useful? Was it not? You can share if it's not. It doesn't have to be positive. I'm also going to put a little link in here if you want to download a copy of the PDF that we just went over for yourself, here it is. It's free. Go ahead, share it. It's cool. I'll update the link to be this replay. But I invite you to work through this in your own time. I know that this Monday class is open. If you want to come back and be like, hey, I had questions, or email me, that's fine. And if I can support you, I will. And if I can't, I will share that I can't. But I just wanted to create an invitation so that you can work on your boundaries, so you can work on practicing them and implementing what we just went over. Because, all this does very little good if it's not put to use. You're very welcome. If you are interested in developing, deepening this practice, if you want to work with me, let me know. I'm teaching a self-defense cohort right now, and I'm opening up a second cohort that's going to start in September. So if you're interested, please send me an email, get in contact, because we do work on boundaries. We do work on boundaries quite deeply. And this work is incremental. Daily work, a little bit at a time. It builds up. It counts. This time you spent right now is an invaluable investment. It's an invaluable investment in yourself. So I want to say thank you so much for choosing to share this time with me today. Deeply honored. And I encourage you to move very gently, very slowly, very mindfully as we leave this space today. Take good care of yourself. I see a quick question. I think that's the next time question. Do I consider distraction also a strategy of defending my boundary? I have thoughts, but that's the next time. But thank you for asking. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful day. I love you so, so, so much. And I'll see you around. Take care. Bye.